Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Grace and today I'm going to be talking to you about the things that I love about living in Copenhagen, Denmark. Really fast, I just want to let you know who I am. So I moved to Copenhagen 3 years ago from the US. I'm here doing my bachelor's degree and I'm in my final semester now, so that's exciting. And that's the perspective that I'm bringing to this video. So feel free to disagree or agree with what I'm saying in the comment section. I'd love to hear your perspectives. Anyway, let's get started. The first thing I love about living in Denmark is the transportation system, especially in Copenhagen. I definitely know there's some people that disagree with me on this, but I come from a suburban area in New Jersey, so basically any public transportation is amazing for me. I love that there's the metro system in Copenhagen and then the S-train system that goes to kind of like the suburbs of Copenhagen. Then you also have an amazing bus system, and going between cities you have the regional trains, so it's really convenient. And there are also some private companies that have their own services running between different cities and towns. On top of that, I think the actual way that it's organized in terms of paying for that is really smart. So there's a card called Rejsekort, which you can just tap into any of the public transportation, and that will kind of like check you in and check out when you're done, and that gives you, then it will charge you accordingly and you can just reload the card. But now they also actually just introduced an app where you can basically do the same thing but on your phone. So there's a lot of really cool innovative stuff happening with the transportation system. Similar to transportation, the next thing that I love is the biking culture here, especially if you're here during the summertime or the springtime or just anytime when the weather is nice. It can be really nice to bike around. There are bike lanes basically everywhere. It's only on maybe some smaller streets where they wouldn't have a designated bike lane, but for the most part, it's extremely easy to get around on your bike, so it's a great way to get exercise, and everybody does it, whether you're someone going to work in a suit or a dress, or you're just going to hang out with your friends. Like, everybody bikes everywhere, and there's no stigma against it either, like biking versus driving somewhere. It's very normal to bike, and it's very safe to bike here as well. The third thing that I love about living in Denmark is the commitment to sustainability. Don't get me wrong, there's still a long way to go, but I would say on like a global scale, things are going very much in the right direction here. For example, the waterways here are really clean. I've been to other cities in Europe where the water was literally like brown, and not because of dirt or something, like it was just not well maintained. The water here is super clean. In my classes, we also talk a lot about the Sustainable Development Goals made by the United Nations. There's a lot of discussion of sustainability in the education system. Secondhand shopping is super popular here as well. Granted, the thrift stores, especially in Copenhagen, can be quite expensive in my opinion, but they also have some really nice like curated stores that you can check out, and people are very into that, I would say. I think there's some other countries that have this as well, like possibly Germany, but there's also a way to recycle your cans, especially like beer cans and stuff like that. You can go to some grocery stores and they'll have a spot where you can just put them in and you actually get money back. It's called pent, and so when you, based on how many cans or sometimes I think glass bottles as well, you put in, you get a certain amount of money back, which is a really nice way to incentivize people to recycle their cans and bottles. A lot of times on trash cans around the city, there's a place where you can actually leave your cans if you want to let somebody else get the money. So for example, if somebody is without a house, they can take that, or if they're just in a financially difficult situation, they can take that and bring it to one of those stations and they can get the money themselves for it, which is really nice. In addition, trash sorting here is really intense, I would say. So there's a lot of separation for paper, cardboard, metals, batteries, glass, milk cartons. Like, there's a lot of trash sorting. Oh, and also organic waste. And I think it's really nice to see every building has its own like trash sorting facility, or set of buildings will have like a little spot where you can just put all of your stuff in these big dumpsters, and then the city comes and collects it. So it's really nice that people are trying to increase how much people can recycle. And the last thing I want to mention about sustainability is that there are also now these like recycling or reuse stations. The Danish word is a genbrugsstation, which is like a reuse station. So there are spaces where people can leave things that they don't want, and then other people can come along and just take them. So it's kind of like a secondhand store, except you're not really buying anything, you're just leaving stuff and people can come take it for free, which is really, really nice to see. The fourth thing that I like about living in Denmark is the architecture. Especially in Copenhagen, you have quite a variety of architecture here. You have like these ultra modern areas, kind of like where I live, and then you also have buildings that are like this red brick look that I think is really cute and more traditional. and to other areas of the city. And also in the suburbs, you have a lot of really like cute looking houses with these nice triangular roofs, and there's like this orangey tile that goes on top, like where the roof is. It's just really cute, and I think it's nice that there's such a variety here. And also a lot of the buildings are moving towards becoming more sustainable as well. The fifth thing that I love about living in Copenhagen and in Denmark in general is the safety that there is here. I can relatively comfortably walk home alone at night or take the metro home or whatever, even if it's literally like 4 a.m. I know in theory you shouldn't and stuff, but it's nice being in a space where you actually can be fairly confident that it's very unlikely anything will happen, versus if I was in the US, like, nah, I wouldn't try that. And I think it's something that I'm going to appreciate even more as I travel more to a wider variety of places where safety unfortunately isn't as much of a guarantee. So I definitely don't take that for granted, being in a place where I feel very comfortable and very safe. You might also notice if you come here that people are quite comfortable leaving their belongings unattended to a certain degree. Like in my school, when you walk into the campus, first of all, you don't need a key card or anything to enter the building. You can just, like, anyone can walk into the building, and people will oftentimes leave their computer somewhere or leave their bag if they go to the bathroom or something. They might ask somebody to watch it, but you can still be relatively certain that it's going to be there when you come back. And same with like locker rooms. I've been to some smaller gyms and like yoga studios where there are no locked lockers in the locker room. It's just all there, and people trust that nobody is going to take their stuff. The sixth thing that I love about living in Denmark is the social welfare state here. It's really strong. So for example, with the healthcare system, basically if you have like a social security number here, it's called a CPR number, then you are eligible for most healthcare or like national health insurance, which covers going to the doctor, like if you're in the hospital or something like that. It covers most of the expenses you would pay for health-wise. It doesn't always cover stuff like therapy or even like physical therapy, going to a chiropractor. It also doesn't cover going to the dentist, but it does have a lot of perks, and I don't even really pay a lot in taxes yet, but I still have it, which is really, really nice. I would say also, depending on your doctor's office, you can get an appointment in a fairly reasonable amount of time, which I know is an issue in some places. For people coming here to study, if you're from the EU or EEA, you can also get something called SU from the government if you're working at least 10 hours a week. SU is basically like a monthly stipend. It's like a tiered program, so if you're living at home, you might receive less in your monthly stipend than if you're living on your own, which makes sense. I don't get that because I'm from the US and I don't have any kind of European citizenship, but if you do have it, it's definitely a nice perk. The seventh thing that I love about living in Denmark is the food, specifically in terms of the quality, because there are much stricter regulations in the EU and in Denmark as well about GMOs specifically, and just the kinds of chemicals and changes that can happen to your food. In Denmark, I was just checking this before I made the video because I wanted to make sure it was accurate, but please do correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that Denmark doesn't allow genetically modified crops to be grown in Denmark, but there are some allowances of genetically modified food produced elsewhere that can come in. But I would say in general, I feel more comfortable going to the grocery store because it's not like, oh my gosh, if I don't buy the most expensive organic food that there is here, it's going to be like very poor quality and potentially bad for my health. So it's really great that they take a more preventative stance with their policy in terms of genetically modified crops and organic food. Also on the topic of food, I really love that there is so much kebab here. I think that's really nice. I'm sorry if I'm saying it super wrong. I hear everybody say it differently. Please correct me. But I think that's really yummy. There are lots of really good kebab places. That's not something that there was so much where I grew up in New Jersey, so it's very fun to have here. Number 8, I love how practical and organized things are in general over here. For example, when you go to the pharmacy, first of all, when you get a prescription, you can get it at any pharmacy. It's not like you have to say, okay, I want it sent to CVS on this road somewhere. You can just go to any pharmacy, show up with your health insurance card, which has your CPR number, and they'll be able to see what you've been prescribed, what you can get a refill for, etc. And you can just grab it, assuming it's in stock, which is really nice. Also, when you go to the pharmacy, there is usually a number system. So when you walk in, there will be a little place where you kind of like scan your card, and there might be a little roll with like ticket number thingies, and then you pull one. So let's say your number 49, and then when you see 49 on the screen, it'll show you which pharmacist to go to, or like which counter to go to, and then you just go, which I think is quite organized. There's also a app where you have all of your health data stored. It's called Min Sunhil, I think, which is where you can see your previous appointments, previous lab results, where you can look for specialists if you got a referral to go to a special kind of doctor, etc., etc. So there's a lot of really useful health data stored in there, and it's all quite centralized. As I mentioned before, there's also the Reisecode app, which is for checking in and out of public transportation anywhere you are. There's Meet Today, which is like My ID. It's a app that you use to log in and out very securely of sites where there might be some kind of sensitive information. So if you're logging into that app that I just mentioned called Min Sunhil, or if you're logging in to mobile pay, that's another really useful app that they have here, which is basically like PayPal or something. There's just so many convenient things here, and it makes it a lot easier when you're trying to settle in as well. Granted, sometimes you have to do some hunting around to figure out all of the apps that you need to download, and I guess if you don't have a smartphone, that also can make things a little bit more difficult, but in general, I would say there is a lot of work being done to make things easier, more efficient, and more accessible for a lot of people. Number 9 is the weather, but specifically the summer weather, and sometimes also the spring weather. Actually, this spring we've been having really good weather, which is awesome. There have been so many sunny days or like partially cloudy days, and even some days where it's hitting like the mid-high 50s, low 60s, which is super nice, especially after a long dark winter. So if you're coming here, I would say summer and spring can definitely be really pleasant seasons. Usually the temperatures are in the 60s, 70s, which is quite comfortable for most people. Number 10, the last point I'm going to mention in this video, is the egalitarian culture here. There's definitely an emphasis on reducing hierarchy. So for example, in work, even in like a university setting, like where I am, everybody calls everybody by their first name, whether they're your professor, your supervisor, your classmate, whatever. Everybody calls everybody by their first name. Can definitely take some getting used to if you're not used to it. Like, I was super uncomfortable with it at first, calling my professors by their first name, but you will adapt. I also feel like it's a pretty progressive country in terms of equality, like with gender equality on the global scale, at least. Again, it's not perfect. I've also heard that Denmark is actually kind of behind compared to some of the other Nordic countries in gender equality. But for me, coming from the US, I do feel like there is a noticeable difference in how women behave here and are treated, because I feel like there's a more gender equal society. You'll see a lot more men fathers pushing strollers around the city. That was something I like never saw in the US. In general, I would say you see more equal parenting, or more like both parents interacting a bit more with the kids instead of only just seeing like moms with their children. Like, I also see a lot more dads with their children. I also see a lot of women that are comfortable going like braless, for example, or even when you go to the beach and stuff, people, like some women might be topless if they want to tan and not have tan lines, and it's not really like a taboo thing here. It's not always the most common, but it's also not like I think it would be a lot more taboo in the US. So there is some progress in that sense, which I think is really cool and fun to experience as a woman myself. I guess kind of in this point also, since we're on it, I wouldn't really say this falls under egalitarian, but this is more just like in terms of being progressive. But there is also a pretty open attitude towards people in the LGBTQ plus community, which is nice. I've also heard from some people that they think that some of it is a bit performative. Like, there is some degree of pink washing, I think is called, with companies and their marketing strategies. But I would say for the most part, in like everyday life, people tend to be pretty accepting of LGBTQ people and are pretty open to it as well, which I think is important to know, whether you are a part of the LGBTQ plus community or whether you are not a part of it. That is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any thoughts on anything that I've said, or if you agree or disagree with any of it, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please stay tuned also for the sequel to this video, which I'm also filming today, which is about things that I don't like as much about living in Denmark, and you also might want to consider if you're thinking about moving here, visiting, whatever. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!